This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Iraqi National Security Advisor Muwaffaq al-Rabi'i said that the efforts put into finding and killing Abu Mus'ab al-Zarqawi will also be used in the future to find the rest of Al-Qaeda's militants in Iraq. The elimination of al-Zarqawi proved that it is possible to deliver a painful blow to organizations that carry out random killings. However, Al-Qaeda's promise to continue waging war suggests that Iraq will continue to be a battlefield for further suicide attacks for at least some time. The question now, who will lead the next stage as Zarqawi's successor?
Women are weeping and wailing after losing loved ones in a roadside explosion on Friday in Baghdad. Funeral processions are underway. The cycle of violence in Iraq shows no signs of slowing down, only a day after the death of Abu Mus'ab al-Zarqawi. Attacks continue in Al-Qadimiyya and Al-Sha'b districts and in the cities of Ba'quba, Nainawa and Kirkuk. They prove that Iraq is still steeped in violence even after the leader of Al-Qaeda in Iraq was killed. The cheering which broke out on the streets after the death of the man, whose name for Iraqis has been connected with slaughter, bombings, and random killing, may have been hasty. The announcement posted on the internet on Thursday, in which Al-Qaeda promised to continue its operations despite Zarqawi's death, is one reason not to think that this will lessen the violence in Iraq. Another reason is that Al-Qaeda fighters led by Zarqawi are only one group among many who are fighting the US-supported Iraqi government.
هم مجرد جماعة واحدة من عدة جماعات تقاتل الحكومة العراقية المدعومة من الولايات المتحدة.
مقتل أبا مصعب الزرقاوي داخل العراق.
The death of Abu Mus'ab al-Zarqawi inside Iraq will have no effect on the Iraqi resistance groups. The Mujahideen started with 5 groups, but their number has reached 9.
مختلفة من فصائل المقاومة العراقية.
الوارد إذن أن العنف سيستمر. لأنه لا يعتمد على الزرقاوي في المهم وفي القيادة. ثمة قيادة عليا في تنظيم القاعدة هي التي تشكل مصدر الإلهام، تضع الخطط وتوزع المسؤوليات، وهي التي يتربع على قمتها أسامة بن لادن. والوارد
It appears then that violence will continue because it does not depend on Zarqawi alone. The highest authority in Al-Qaeda is the source of the inspiration for the fighters. It directs and delegates responsibility. Osama bin Laden heads Al-Qaeda, and it appears he will be the one to choose a successor to Zarqawi. He has 2 people in mind, one from Iraq, known as Abdurrahman al-Iraqi, who's said to be very close to bin Laden, and another from Egypt, known as Abu al-Masri, who was trained in Afghanistan. Either way, the suicide bombings and killings will continue because the principle is the same, which is what Al-Qaeda feels is the solution for Iraq. But observers believe that Abdurrahman al-Iraqi will be Zarqawi's successor because he knows the country and is able to build relations with the tribes and groups that support the resistance. Also, bin Laden may want to avoid the damage done to Al-Qaeda's image by Zarqawi through his beheadings and random killing of civilians. Al-Iraqi, who is said to be less extreme than Zarqawi, will concentrate his attacks on the American and Iraqi forces. Meanwhile, Taliban leader Mullah Omar said that the confrontation with what he called the Crusaders will continue after Zarqawi's death, giving support to Abdurrahman al-Iraqi, who himself signed the Al-Qaeda announcement on the internet. The new Iraqi government and the Americans, for their part, are discussing their plans for the new developments.
تحليل يبدو العراق معه مرشحا لمزيد من الأوجاع. غير أن الحكومة العراقية الجديدة والأمريكيين يتحدثون بدورهم عن خطط للتعامل مع الواقع الجديد.
ومتابعة لهذا الموضوع انضم إلينا مباشرة من القاهرة الدكتور ضياء رشوان المتخصص في الجماعات الإسلامية. دكتور ضياء، إلى أي درجة لو جعلت
Joining us from Cairo to comment on these developments is Dr. Diya Rashwan, an expert on Islamic groups. Dr. Rashwan, considering the news reports about American infiltration of Al-Qaeda, which helped in the killing of Zarqawi, to what extent will this also help lessen Al-Qaeda's ability to inflict pain on Iraqis?
للقاعدة أدى إلى مقتل الزرقاوي.
في حقيقة الأمر قاعدة الجهاد في بلاد الرافدين بقيادة الزرقاوي سببت آلاما كثيرة للعراقيين ونعرف جميعا نوعية الهجمات التي كان التنظيم.
Al-Qaeda, of course, has caused the Iraqis a lot of pain, and we're all familiar with the kind of attacks that the organization has carried out. But what we need to pay attention to here is the actual size of the organization within the Iraqi resistance against the occupation forces. This is confirmed by official and semi-official American reports. One example I can think of is the operation that took place in 2005 in Iraq. According to American research centers and the U.S. State Department, 34,000 military operations were carried out in Iraq in 2005, including 3,400 that were classified as terrorist operations. This is about 10% of the total operations that took place in Iraq. Also, attacks against military personnel in October, the month with the highest number of such operations, reached 3,000, including 2,050 against the coalition forces and 170 against civilians. So if we suppose that Zarqawi acted alone in all of the terrorist operations, then most of the violence in any case comes from the national resistance movement.
فهو في كل الأحوال الكتلة الرئيسية للعنف في العراق أو ما يسميه الأمريكيون التمرد تأتي من قوى المقاومة الوطنية المشروعة.
A source in the Ministry of Interior announced that dozens of citizens have been martyred, including 6 employees of the Ministry of Oil, and 36 others were injured this morning by a booby-trapped car that went off at a gas station in the area of Tal Afar. An explosive device that was planted by terrorists went off when a bus was passing by in the area of Karb in the Dura refineries in Baghdad. The source also said that the explosion that went off in Baghdad targeted sensitive sites near the Dura refineries. Meanwhile, a criminal terrorist shot at a female and male teacher in the Shu'la neighbor north of Baghdad, wounding both of them. 2 booby-trapped cars exploded at a popular market in the city of Balad, martyring 7 people and wounding 20 others, in addition to causing damage to commercial stores in the area.
استمرار الانفجارات في العراق منذ ساعات الصباح الأولى، بما فيها انفجار وقع في أحد الباصات والذي أسفر عن استشهاد 6 أشخاص من العمال في جنوب العاصمة.
The violence continued in Iraq in the early morning hours. An explosion went off in a bus, murdering 6 workers south of the capital of Baghdad. According to the Iraqi police, 6 other people were murdered and more than 10 others were wounded by an explosive device that was near one of the buses that was transporting workers in the Dura neighborhood. Meanwhile, a female and male teacher were shot and wounded in the Shu'la neighborhood north of Baghdad. On the main road between Tikrit and Auja, an Iraqi policeman was martyred when terrorists shot at him. In Mosul, a security source announced that 4 people were martyred and 24 others were injured by a booby-trapped car in Tel Afar. This comes as the multinational forces and Iraqi officials vowed to pursue those who carry out terrorist operations and sectarian violence. In a statement, a commander of the coalition forces announced that it killed 7 terrorists, injured 3 others, and arrested 2 more in a raid operation that followed an air attack in one of the suburbs of Baquba. The statement added that the terrorists are being targeted for their relationship with the leadership of the Al-Qaeda organization in Iraq.
عملية دهم عقبتها غارة جوية في إحدى ضواحي مدينة باقوبة. وأضاف البيان إن الإرهابيين المستهدفين هم على علاقة بقادة تنظيم القاعدة في العراق.
يعاني العراقيون من جملة المعاناة المتعددة.
Housing is yet another major problem facing Iraqi families. Some families have become displaced or homeless in light of this housing crisis. Al-Baghdadiya's correspondent Mohammed Jabbar sheds light on this growing phenomenon.
والمواطنين حول هذه الظاهرة.
Some Iraqi families could not find better places to live than in these shelters. They were forced to leave their houses after enduring hard living conditions in light of the current security situation in Iraq. They were stripped of the minimum requirements of life, which is to live in a decent house and make ends meet. Instead, they have become homeless and displaced.
Life is hard and the rent is very high. I cannot keep up with the living expenses, so I came to this shelter.
Frankly, I don't have a house, and there are no places to rent. That's why I live here in the shelter.
We do not own a house, and rent is very high. Our income does not cover living expenses and rent. I have 6 children.
We have nothing. We barely have enough for food. People feel empathy for us.
The Ministry of Housing and Development, which is in charge of providing appropriate housing for the Iraqi citizens, confirmed that it always seeks to build new housing complexes. However, the ministry is facing many problems that are hampering its efforts. One of those obstacles has to do with the security situation, which has forced many families to flee their homes and migrate elsewhere.
خطة وزارة الإعمار والإسكان في تشييد المجمعات السكنية في عموم محافظات القطر. حاليا هنالك العديد من المجمعات السكنية.
The Ministry of Housing and Development is aware of the problem, and it has a plan to remedy the situation. There are several housing complexes and residential developments that are now underway throughout Iraq. Some of these projects are at completion phase, and others are still being built. However, these projects will not meet the growing need for housing in Iraq. Under the new Iraqi National Unity Government, the Ministry of Housing and Development will implement a plan over a 4-year period. The plan includes housing strategies which are based on analysis and studies of the Iraqi housing market. The plan includes main aspects that will help meet part of this growing housing demand.
لوضع المحاور الرئيسية اللي تساهم في سد جزء من حاجة السكن المتفاقمة في العراق.
كيف يمكن للإنسان أن يعيش في مثل هذه الظروف؟
How can one live under such harsh conditions? How can these children grow in this kind of environment? And who will save these displaced families? All these questions need to be addressed by concerned authorities.
أصحاب الحل والعقد لقناة البغدادية محمد جبار بغداد.
Fatwa, or religious decree, issued by Mr. Mohammed Abu Faris, a Jordanian member of parliament and a representative of the Islamic Work Front, describing the late terrorist Abu Musab al-Zarqawi as a martyr, has stirred criticism among Jordanians, especially since he failed to describe victims of the Amman bomb attacks as martyrs themselves. Meanwhile, the Attorney General issued warrants for the arrest of 4 parliament members accused of offering condolences to Zarqawi's family.
4 members of the Jordanian parliament and representatives of the Islamic Work Front have offered condolences to the family of the late terrorist Abu Musab al-Zarqawi. One of the members, Mr. Mohammed Abu Faris, described the late Al-Qaeda leader as a martyr. On the same token, he failed to describe victims of the Amman bomb attacks as martyrs. Meanwhile, angry Jordanians took to the streets in a massive demonstration to protest and condemn Abu Faris's comments. Al-Zarqawi has previously claimed responsibility for the Amman terrorist bomb attacks, which have killed 60 people and injured dozens of others. His terrorist network justified the killings of innocent people. According to the Islamic Work Front, the body has condemned the hotel bombing attacks in Amman and offered condolences to victims' families. Mohammed Abu Faris, a parliament member, described Al-Zarqawi as a martyr.
Al-Zarqawi is a martyr and a freedom fighter. We congratulate his family on his martyrship. I ask God to have mercy over the souls of those killed in the Amman bomb attacks. However, I cannot refer to them as martyrs. Only ignorant people use the word martyrship very lightly.
How did victims' families in Amman and Jordanians react to Abu Faris' comments?
They should hang him.
Why?
Because he killed my dad.
Who?
Abu Musab al-Zarqawi.
I feel very sad and disappointed in light of the comments issued by the Islamic Work Front describing al-Zarqawi, who killed many innocent people, as a martyr, and failing to describe victims of the Amman bomb attacks as martyrs. This is not a good deed.
It is an embarrassing position taken by members of the Islamic War Front. They have offered condolences to Zarqawi's family and describe him as a martyr. On the same token, they fail to describe the Amman bombing victims, including my wife and children, as martyrs. Their actions were indeed surprising.
Whoever wants to plant the seeds of sectarian strife in Jordan will not find fertile soil here. Our nation is bound together and it will stand united against those trying to spread sectarian conflict among our people.
According to the Islamic Work Front, the visit to al-Zarqawi's condolences hall by 4 of its members was a routine social call, which is to pay respects to the deceased family. However, this visit is considered to be a major violation aimed at derailing the national unity in Jordan. It has become a national problem, which was unanimously condemned by various political and social factions and groups. Meanwhile, the Attorney General ordered a criminal investigation into the case.
إن قيام النواب الأربعة بزيارة مقر العزاء للمدعو أبو مصعب الزرقاوي يقع تحت باب الجرائم التي تنال من الوحدة الوطنية أو تعكر الصفاء.
The visit by the 4 parliament members to the headquarters of al-Zarqawi's condolences hall is considered a criminal act. It is listed under the crimes against national unity or the crimes that stir strife among the people of a one nation. The law prohibits actions that stir conflict among members of the society or create tension among various sectarian groups or factions for different reasons. Article 150 of the Jordanian Penal Code clearly specifies that any materials, written or spoken, or actions that intend to stir sectarian or racial strife and conflict among society are prohibited by law, and violators are subject to sentence ranging from 6 months to 3 years and a maximum fine of 500 Jordanian dinars. If the 4 members' actions constitute a crime and qualify under Article 150, then the 4 defendants will stand trial in a special court. We are waiting to see if they will be indicted by the Attorney General.
فإن هذا الفعل يخضع لمنطوق هذه المادة ويستوجب العقاب أمام المحكمة المختصة بعد إحالة التحقيق من عند المدعي.
It is worth mentioning that such action by the 4 members intends to give momentum for the Takfiri ideology in Jordan, especially in light of Abu Faris's comments in which he described al-Zarqawi as a martyr. The 4 members offered condolences to the terrorist family and thus insulted and disrespected the feeling of the Jordanian people. They now have a national duty, which is to correct this mishap.
Lebanon said it had arrested a man yesterday who was a key mastermind in the car bombing that killed the senior official of the Islamic Jihad, Mahmoud Majzoub, and his brother inside on May 26 of last month. The army said documents and equipment linked to the crime were seized with him and showed that he has links with Israel's intelligence services. The army's intelligence services called sources, which revealed that the crimes was undertaken by one of the most dangerous nets in the history of Israeli-Lebanese intelligence ever since the 1990s. Sources say that the army, through an operation dubbed Dawn Surprise, were able to arrest 5 people, including 1 or 2 Palestinians. Sources further also said that the arrest of the net's head, Mahmoud Abu Rafah, in Hasbaya helped achieve the arrest of the members in a region near Ain al-Helwe Palestinian camp. Investigations are underway to reveal whether the net is connected with the previous killing of Palestinian leader Ahmad Jibreen and 2 Hezbollah leaders, Ali Saleh and Khalid Awali. In the latest bid to shed more attention on the cause of Lebanese prisoners in Syrian jails, Marek Shuker produced a documentary dubbed The Lost Children of Lebanon, which was screened last night at the Khalil Gibran Garden in front of the Esquire building in downtown Beirut. The grief of loved ones who are still lobbying for the release or at least the fate of family members sombered the atmosphere. Shuker told Future Television he put his faith in the media to accentuate this cause, which he said even the international community has turned its back on.
You look at all those people over here. You see the people from different communities, from different religious background, and I think this is the great example of how the Lebanese can stay and stand together. And unfortunately, they managed to stand in an unfortunate case, an unfortunate event. But I think this is the greatest example for how the Lebanese can live together. And this is, I'm inviting all the Lebanese to take a stand, to take action, and to stay with to support those families, because they're really suffering a lot.
The International Committee of the Red Cross said it was sending a team to the U.S. military prison camp at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, to take stock of the situation after the alleged suicides of 3 so-called war on terror detainees there. According to a Navy official who was quoted by the New York Times, the men, 2 Saudis and a Yemeni, tried to hide themselves behind laundry and otherwise to keep guards from seeing them commit suicide. White House officials described the 3 men as committed terrorists, and military officials said that none had been among the handful of prisoners whose cases had been brought before military commissions for prosecution. Meanwhile, the United Nations reporter on torture said the European Union should pressure U.S. President George W. Bush at an upcoming summit in Vienna to close the Guantanamo Bay prison camp.
We return now to the dangerous situation in Sderot. IBA's Eli Wagelerner spoke a short time ago with David Spanglet, a resident of the town, and asked him what it's like living under a constant bombardment of Qassams.
We are in a very bad situation. I hear in the media that Qassams landed in Sderot. I want to tell you that Qassams don't land. Qassams explode. Qassams cause panic. Qassams kill. Qassams cause damage. And our children don't sleep at night. And I think that a normal person can't comprehend this situation in Sderot.
How do you calm down the children?
I'll tell you the truth, it's very hard, because we don't have any answers for ourselves. We try to be strong. We try to show them that we have mamad in our houses. We go in when we hear the signal Shachar Adom.
The red alert.
It's very hard.
The red alert. Yes.
It's very hard.
Are you thinking of leaving town?
I'm not thinking of leaving town. I am a simple citizen in Sderot. I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for people to be sorry for me. I'm asking for one thing. I'm asking for security. I think that every country in the world would not let this situation happen in a city, in that country. Our Minister of Defense lives in Sderot. He sees and feels these Qassams just like we do. And I don't understand why he blocks the army from saving us. We are in danger. These Qassams kill.
What would be your solution if you were the defense minister?
I'll tell you again, I am not the Minister of Defense. And I don't know exactly what we can do. But I do know one thing. We have a very strong army, and our army can take care of this situation. But this government does not let them. I just came back from the tent of the hunger strikers in Sderot. These are people just like us that feel that they have nothing else to do, not to sit there and strike. Because we are in a situation of life or death.
في اتصال هاتفي أجرته معه قناة
The Somali tourism minister said that the Somali government, which is now based in the city of Badua, has started negotiating with the Islamic Courts militia, which took over the capital of Mogadishu after winning battles against United States-backed warlords.
تحالف أمراء الحرب.
4 months after bloody battles in Somalia, the Islamic Courts militia managed to enforce their control over most of Mogadishu, forcing United States-backed warlords to withdraw. The interim government of Abdullah Yusuf welcomed enforcing control over the capital and tried to win over the support of the Islamic Courts militia's leaders by calling on them to open a dialogue with the government. The government delegates are scheduled to arrive in Mogadishu from their temporary base in Badawa.
الحكومي الذي من المقرر أن يصل مقديشو قادما من العاصمة المؤقتة بداوة.
نعم. والحكومة بدأت فعلا.
The government has effectively assigned the mayor of Mogadishu, Mahmoud Ali Hassan Gabu, to conduct preliminary talks with the leaders of the Islamic courts.
The call for internal dialogue coincided with international political maneuvers from several neighboring capitals. Kenya announced the deportation of members of the so-called Coalition for Building Peace and Fighting Terrorism. On the Arabic level, the Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir called for holding a summit similar to the Arabic Troika in Egypt, which was held to discuss new developments in Arab countries, including Somalia. The Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak and the Arab League Secretary General Amr Moussa released statements welcoming the initiative. These statements came after Moussa met with the advisor of the Sudanese President Dr. Mustafa Uthman Ismail, who stressed the importance of supporting the interim Somali government in its efforts to launch the national reconciliation in Somalia.
We welcome the decision of the interim federal government to open a national dialogue with us. We also welcome Kenya's decision to arrest and deport members of the so-called Coalition for Building Peace and Fighting Terrorism. We also welcome international efforts aimed at achieving peace in Somalia.
Regardless of what position the Islamic Courts militia may take towards the interim government in the future, military maneuvers continue despite international and internal political efforts. Hundreds of men from the Islamic Courts militia have conducted military maneuvers in the northern parts of the capital, opening the door for the possibility that these forces may take advantage of their victory in Mogadishu to continue mobilizing towards the city of Jowhara, the last standing castle for the warlords.
Italy began the World Cup campaign with a solid 2-0 victory over Ghana. Andrea Pirlo's rasping 40th minute drive put Italy ahead before substitute Vincenzo Iaquinta settled an intriguing Group E contest of contrasting styles with a breakaway goal 7 minutes from the end. Italy twice hit the woodwork in the first half, and Ghana keeper Richard Kingston made a series of excellent saves to keep the four-time African champions in the game before Iaquinta struck. Thomas Rosicky scored twice as the Czech Republic enjoyed an impressive 3-0 victory over the United States in the World Cup opener on Monday. Giant striker Jan Koller had headed in the first goal in the 5th minute, and Rosicky was on target in the 36th and 76th minutes in the crucial Group E match. Australia stormed home with 3 goals in the final 8 minutes for a stunning 3-1 come-from-behind victory over Japan. Japanese playmaker Shunsuke Nakamura scored a controversial goal at 26 minutes, but a double from Tim Kyle and another goal from John Aloisi secured Australia a dramatic victory. Following the 3-1 defeat against Mexico, Iran's national squad returned to Friedrichshafen Monday to resume practice for their second match against Portugal in Frankfurt on Saturday. Ali Khademi, suffering from a nagging ankle injury, was forced to sit out team practice. Meanwhile, Feridun Zandi is expected to return for the game against Portugal. And Iran coach Branko Ivankovic says Captain Ali Dai would miss the crucial game with a back problem.
The views expressed on Mosaic are not those of Link TV or its sponsors, but of the broadcasters themselves. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities. and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation and Henry and Virgilia Dakin. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs which connect you to the world.